Senator Waters or Wright?
No, Senator Waters, and then I'll have a few questions.
Okay,
as well, Chair.
Senator Waters.
Thanks, Chair. Hi again, folks. Reef Rescue Program, have we got the right folk for that? I can't see it in the budget papers, but I'm told that it remains. Has it been rebranded to the Australian Government Reef Program?
That's correct, Senator.
Okay. And does the 200 million that was previously committed when it was called Reef Rescue still remain?
So the total funding in reef activities, and the question here is additionality. So we're not talking about the funding that goes to NRM groups along the coast for as part of the base funding we're just talking about with Senator Siewert. There's, out of what was previously reef investments and badged differently, there's 160 million that is has been contracted and allocated. On top of that, there is the measure in the budget, which is $40 million for Reef Trust, which is in the budget papers, Reef 2050. So
Right,
the total funding envelope for additionality with respect to water quality and coastal habitat it remains at 200 million.
Okay, so Reef Rescue used to be 200 million. Am I correct in that you've just told me that Reef Rescue is now called Australian Government Reef Program, which is 200 million, but it also has from within that 200 million the $40 million Reef 2050 plan?
Inside that 200 million envelope,
So it's a reduction in what used to be Reef Rescue funds.
That's correct. There was reductions taken from what was previously notionally allocated for under Reef Rescue, but there has been 40 million which has been offset from the Natural Heritage Trust, which is now the Reef Trust.
So, Minister Cormann, I recall a pre-election commitment that the Reef Rescue funding would be maintained at 200 million. What happened there?
Well, I'll take that on notice. If there was any election commitments that we've made that we are keeping, but of course
not this one.
Any election commitments that we've made we're keeping, but of course beyond that, I mean, if there is uncommitted funding that is available anywhere in the budget, then we obviously have looked for opportunities quite appropriately to repair the budget mess that we've inherited.
Right, well, thanks. If you can take that on notice, why that appears to be a discrepancy there. Just quickly on Reef Trust, what are the governance arrangements for that?
Senator, we're currently working through the implementation arrangements for the Reef Trust. We are consulting with the Queensland Government and Gabrumpa around the mechanisms for delivering the trust. The expectation is that we would take a phased approach to implementation of the Reef Trust. The election commitment talked about the initial contribution of $40 million as well as the pooling of offset funds, and over time there is the potential for the trust to also attract funding from other sources, from private philanthropy and the
who's
like.
going to be administering it though, is my question.
So the Australian Government will have oversight of the Reef Trust, but it will be implemented or delivered in close cooperation with the Queensland Government and Gabrumpa.
Okay, and who will provide the scientific expertise to guide the spending of the funds?
What we're currently finalising the arrangements for the various expertise to be provided to inform decisions through the Reef Trust, but we are working to coordinate science input into the Reef Trust in a way which doesn't create an additional burden on the range of organisations that currently provide science for a whole range of things reef related. So we are in discussion with AIMS, who we would hope will convene the science input into the Reef Trust, so they will consult with the range of existing science panels. There are a few science panels already in existence for things like the Reef Plan, Gladstone Healthy Harbour Partnership, and a range of other bodies. So AIMS would convene the scientific input depending on the nature of the expertise required.
Okay, thank you. And has there been any discussions of allowing corporations who are required to make contributions to Reef Trust under conditions to use Reef Trust branding or their association with Reef Trust in any kind of PR materials?
Are you talking about in relation to offsets or more generally?
Or both?
Not
there's a
specifically to
distinction.
my knowledge. There are some conditions that have been made as part of some recent approvals which do talk about the Reef Trust, but I'm not aware of any. I'll have to take on notice
Yeah, there's
the
been
question
any
about any branding
discussions. Great. And can I just, am I correct in that the Reef Trust will allow other than like-for-like offsets? In that, you know, you might be able to dump dredge spoil if you research dolphins.
I think there's still a bit of work that we need to do on the offsets component of the Reef Trust, Senator. There are, as you would know, discussions occurring at the moment between the government and the Queensland Government on the one-stop shop negotiations. That does include discussion of offsets and how they might intersect with the Reef Trust. So I think there's still a little bit of work to be done there.
Senator,
Because I was told earlier
that's-
that the Queensland had agreed to adopt the Commonwealth offsets policy.
that
You're
is
saying
correct.
that's not the
No,
case
that
in
is
relation to
correct.
Reef Trust?
No,
That is correct.
That is the case.
That's correct.
Okay, thank
But
you.
as you know, Queensland is in the process of making changes to their
Yes.
policy. So
Yes, and it's not making it stronger.
uh,
We didn't have time to go over that today, unfortunately.
yeah, but Senator, the relationship of offsets into the Reef Trust is one of the more complex elements of the design, and
Yeah,
we
indeed.
want to get that right.
Okay, and just in the interest of time, because my colleague has some questions too, my final lot of questions are on the Wildlife Corridor Plan. Can I confirm that that's been scrapped? Yes, and
So that was
what
a
is the-
decision in my EFO,
Yeah.
and the measure that appears in the budget, Senator, as I understand it, was a small amount of funding that was residual, which was being cleaned up there.
Okay.
So
Well, what's the department or the government doing in that space now that we don't have the Wildlife Corridor Plan, we don't have the Biodiversity Fund? What work's being done to make sure that biodiversity and the effects of climate change on biodiversity and habitat shrinkage is still being looked at by the government?
In terms of the, we discussed earlier, Senator, the 20 million trees component of the National Land Care Program, and it's clear in budget paper number 2 that the $50 million that's been initially allocated, remembering that 20 million trees is a 2020 commitment, but the $50 million over 4 years initially is to support the planting of native trees and associated understory species to re-establish green corridors and urban forests. So in part there is now funding, dedicated funding vehicle with respect to re-establishing corridors with respect to trees and understory species.
And that's within the 20 million trees
That is
thing?
the 20 million
That
trees.
All right, look, I've got lots more questions, but I'm going to pass over to Senator Wright.
Thank you, good evening.